Hello, I have the A2A Simulations Wings of Power 3 Spitfire in Microsoft Flight Simulator X or FSX, located at Gladstone Airport, Queensland, Australia, using third-party scenery and a third-party weather engine for better weather. I'm going to do a short flight in the Spitfire. So while we look on the outside of the model, it's a very nice model. The paint I have is Black Eagle, obviously. So the Spitfire is a tail dragger or conventional gear aircraft, meaning two main wheels and a tail wheel. Result of this is poor forward visibility, and it also has very narrow main undercarriage. So the undercarriage being mounted on the inner wing and retracting outwards, as opposed to being mounted further out on the wing and retracting inwards. A tail dragger aircraft, it's easy for an unwary pilot to lose control of the tail swinging around during turns, and because the Spitfire has a narrow undercarriage, it's easy for the aircraft to ground leap. Another note to take into consideration when ground handling the aircraft is it has a big high performance V12 engine which produces a lot of heat and a very tiny radiator. This is 1930s technology here, so on the ground the engine will overheat, guaranteed. It's also, the radiator is also blocked by the right undercarriage, so you've got to get airborne very quickly. We have the air intake here, so the engine mounted in the front of the nose, carburetor and supercharger at the back here, fuel tanks in front of the cockpit behind the engine, top fuel tank, bottom fuel tank, and under here we have the oil cooler. This is a Mark 1A Spitfire, so I have a de Havilland 2-speed 3-blade prop fitted, as well as a bubble canopy. The 2-speed prop giving better performance, and the bubble canopy giving better visibility and a bit more headroom for the pilot. Spitfire was well known for its elliptical shaped wings and its very aesthetic looks in general. So that's the external model and some notes to take into consideration when handling the aircraft. Let's hop inside the cockpit. So here we are inside the cockpit of the Spitfire. I'll start on the left side and do a very brief overview. So down here we have the rudder trim, elevator trim, pitot heat switch, gun camera switch, the map case, and the radiator lever, which I'll open now. There we go. Don't need that open. This one here, this control is the propeller pitch control for the two-speed 3-blade prop. This is a light, shines on the panel. We have our throttle or engine controls here, mixture lever, 2 settings, lean or rich, throttle lever, and this is our control switch for the landing gear indicator. And before we start the aircraft, we'll turn that switch on. But for now, to save power, I'll turn that off. Little button here is a gear horn silencer. So in a certain configuration, if you were to have the flaps lowered and the gear still retracted, a horn would sound to alert the pilot that you have not got the gear lowered. If this malfunctions, you can silence it, or if an engineer is testing it, you can silence it, whatever. This guy here is an overboost control. You would never overboost the engine unless during combat. Down here, these little wheels are the mixture lever lock and the throttle lever lock. Up here we have a volume control for the headset. we have our magnetos on the panel here. So starting on the panel, left side we have magnetos, clock, brake pressure, elevator trim indicator, light switch here, landing light switch. Below that we have our landing light beam lever where we aim the beam of the landing light, and we have our extend or retract landing light control. Gear indicator, oxygen controls here. So we have our oxygen altitude and our oxygen quantity. We have our nav light switch, and flap indicator. That's the left side of the panel. In the middle up top we obviously have the gun sight and the switch. Heading up to the right side we have our voltmeter, amp meter, generator switch. On the right side of the panel, our engine instruments. So RPM, revs per minute, or tacho, boost pressure, or manifold pressure, whichever you want to call it, fuel pressure, oil temperature, coolant temperature, top fuel tank quantity, and bottom fuel tank quantity. This switch is our starting magneto switch. Into the middle of the panel we have our primary flying instruments, airspeed, artificial horizon or attitude indicator, vertical speed indicator, altimeter, compass or heading indicator, and our turn coordinator. Down below that we have our lighting and starter switch. On the right side below the panel we have our slow running cutoff. So with the engine idle, to shut down the engine, you would pull this out and hold it out until the engine stops, and then you can release it. Our primer, fuel cocks, compass. Rudder pedals obviously. Our brakes in the Spitfire not operated by our feet but by our hand. That's our brake lever there. We have our gun switch here and control column. On the right side of the cockpit here we have our gear control. So the Mark 1 Spitfire was all done manually. We select either down or up for the undercarriage, and then you pump the gear. Spitfires often got what's called Spitfire knuckles, where they would quite often graze their knuckles on the side of the cockpit here due to pumping the landing gear up or down. I'm not sure what this is. It's a remote contactor control. Not exactly sure what that does. Down here we have some recognition light controls and a Morse code key, windscreen de-ice, harness locking lever, emergency gear release, and our oxygen valve. So that's the basics of the cockpit there. Couple of notes to go with our flap indicator here. There are also flap indicators on the wings. Very hard to see here, but I'll lower the flaps. They have one setting only. It's either up or down. Here we can see our flap indicator raised. Here as well, indicating that they are down. Now if I raise the flaps are lowered by air, compressed air. They are raised by springs. So we watch the indicator here. Flaps are raised. Yes, flaps are raised. The landing gear also has external indicators. If this indicator here malfunctions, right here, this little red stick, that indicates that the gear is lowered when it's sticking out. When that's retracted in the wing, the gear is raised. So let's look at starting the engine. Okay, I have brakes set, fuel on, Mixture is rich. Propeller pitch full, fine. Prime the engine. I'll give it 3 shots. Lock the primer. Magnetos on. Generator on. Starting mag on. Throttle set. And here we go. Catches, nice. Let's give it some throttle to get it running. Okay, there we go. So we've got the engine running. Now we keep an eye on our temperatures here. Keep in mind the radiator is very small. It will overheat eventually. So we can't do much until the oil temperature reaches 40 degrees.